Thanks for joining us. I am excited to talk about this topic today because it's a common, uh, really common unknown Medicaid program, and those that do know about it, that it's a lot of misconceptions about it and how the whole thing works. So we're going to talk about this today, and this is the CDPAP program, which is this program which, not to give the whole thing away, is this program that allows you to end up giving a lot more flexibility than the community Medicaid program, in terms of a lot of different things that we'll talk about today. What most people know it for is the ability for you as a caregiver, a loved one, being able to serve and get paid for as an aide, uh, through the Medicaid program, which is amazing. So there's a lot here that we'll kind of unpack before we dive into some of the details of the CDPAP program. We're just going to tackle some of the ideas of just Medicaid generally, so we can really see where this fits in. Like Courtney said, just so we're clear, what we're going to talk about today is not legal advice. It's legal information, and that's it is a distinction that I just want to make known there, because really what it comes down to is don't leave this call today and go run out and start doing things, because all this is super fact specific, as you'll see, to your individual case. And the things that are going on in your lives, but this is general information about options that are available. Uh, so just like Courtney had said, you are all in listen and view only mode. So your microphones are disabled, your videos are disabled, so no one can see you. So there's that. The way that we can communicate is through the chat and through the Q&A. The chat we'll use, I might ask some questions as we go through the material today. And the Q&A is for you to put questions in as we go about anything that we're covering. I can answer those questions for you. We're going to save that for the end. But go ahead so you remember, because if you're anything like me, as you go through it, then you will forget the question if we don't put it into the time, because that's what happens to me. So go ahead, put it into the Q&A, and we'll get that question answered at the end of the material. So today what we're going to cover is, first, what is Medicaid, so we can tackle that, how we can get coverage of this long-term care and what that is, what services Medicaid can cover generally. And then we're going to talk about the CDPAP program and how you can get paid for taking care of a loved one, but also so you can take more control over the aides that you have, how you could perhaps apply for Medicaid and keep aides that you already have and not have a change in service. And so all those things that are flexible with the CDPAP program rather than the straight community Medicaid. And then we'll lastly talk about what you can do now, action steps you can take now to plan ahead for this and alleviate the financial stress that we see that happens when we don't plan ahead for this care. So, I mean, this is for you if you are frustrated about not knowing your options, you're overwhelmed about all the things that you've heard, or you've heard from my friend at the mailbox about this option that they did. If it's super confusing, we're going to kind of walk through this piecemeal. If you want to be able to take care of your loved ones, maybe it's a mother, maybe it's a father, if you want to be able to figure out how you can take care of this, then this is an option. If you're just learning about this as something that you want maybe a child to take care of for you, and you want to be able to protect your hard-earned assets for your family and get the care that you need, then this is also for you. And if you wanted to plan ahead so that we can reserve our savings for ourselves rather than have to contribute this towards the cost of care that we don't otherwise necessarily need to do, then again, this is something that you're going to want to listen. I know some of you on the call today, we know each other. Some of you don't know each other. My name is Sheryll. I am the CEO managing attorney of Sheryll Law PC. We are an estate planning, elder law, trust and estates law firm located on the east end of Long Island. This is all that we do. So all of the content we've been putting together over the last few months, Courtney's been instrumental in doing that. It's all been about these questions that we see our clients need. And so that is really, really important, because this is very complicated. This is not something that just anybody can just pick up and do necessarily. That does oh, my friend can do a will, or I can download this off the internet. As you'll see, this is very, very nuanced area of the law. We dedicate our time to doing that. And I just want to tell you a little bit about the reason why is our goal here at Sheryll Law PC is to help as many people, as many families protect their hard-earned assets and age with dignity. If they would like to be able to age in place at home, that is an absolute goal. We're trying to help people keep them out of nursing homes. But if they do need to go to a nursing home, that their assets aren't also completely obliterated by the cost of care of upwards of $17,000 a month as of last year. I'm sure that's gone up by about 10 to 15% for this year as well. So that is really our mission. The reason I do this is because of my family. And the reason I started the law firm is because I realized that life is all about these milestones, right? This is actually my wife and I at a wedding. We were 3 years old here, and this is what it's all about. It's about family. We met then family friends and grew up, writing each other as we got older. But eventually, we did connect when I was about 20 years old. That's me here with Brigitte. But this is interesting because this is I had never wanted to be a lawyer and even do any of this, but I had studied criminal justice. You'll see me in a police uniform. I was studying criminal justice to become a police officer, and I took a class in criminal law, and it was the first time ever at that point that I had ever taken a class that I was passionate about. I didn't know it was passion, but I was studying for the course, which I never studied before for any other course. And the studying went by like minutes when it was really hours. So I just followed that, and we got married. We had our first child. That's Eliana. She just turned 7 last month. Then I was working as a lawyer. I had done some things for foreclosure defense. I had done some estate planning. I had done some corporate representation. But my second daughter was born premature, and we almost lost her. She is, you'll see here in this next picture here back there, Lily. That's a couple of years old now. She's turning 6 now this October, and she's losing her teeth, and so much fun. But when that all happened, I decided, you know what, all this other work that I'm doing really doesn't pair to the experience that I had in estate planning. And I kind of surveyed the area and said, there's really no one that's bringing this passion to this work and dedicating themselves. Like, I know that I can do myself, and I can build a team around that we have done to do this over the last 5 years. And when Lily came home from the hospital, I made that decision to quit my job with two kids under 2 and go ahead and start this practice. And the reason is because the laws are complicated, and not knowing them is your biggest disadvantage, because these are the rules of the game. And so by not doing them and not taking action early enough, people can end up into the situation where they don't have as many options. And I also saw so many people coming across my desk at the time with incorrect information, and even worse, where they took the incorrect information and acted on it and really messed things up. That now not only did we have to try to help them with what the original plan would be, but also to help them correct the mistakes that they had already made. Sometimes they're not correctable. We had one, for example, read something about gifting an asset out of their name for Medicaid purposes, and they just downloaded a form from the county clerk's office. And yes, that worked for the Medicaid purposes, but when they wanted to change the beneficiary later on, they weren't able to do that because what they had done was give away their house. And they didn't realize that was actually what was happening. And really the biggest payoff, right, for me is seeing the stress, the worry just turn to relief, knowing that, hey, there is something we can do. As seeing people's smiles when we're dealing with a very difficult topic. So that's why I wanted to talk about this today, and why we can spend an hour talking about a very difficult topic. So the first thing is, let's just frame our conversation today. That's what we're going to be talking about, is long-term care. Okay, what long-term care is the coverage for the purposes of today, right, of home health aides and nursing homes and assisted living facilities. That's what long-term care is. Now, the biggest myth, all right, if we take away anything from this, is that Medicare, all right, with a C-A-R-E at the end, does not pay for long-term care. Okay, they don't pay for it. you have really three options then that you can use to pay for long-term care. Number one is pay out of pocket. Okay, some people choose to do this. This is their plan. Some people don't choose to do this. This is what they get backed into because they don't plan ahead. And some people are somewhere in the middle where they start spending money for an aide. The cost starts to go up. They start to think about it. They start to seek out their options. The second option for long-term care is long-term care insurance or some hybrid of that. They have life insurance policies with long-term care riders. We've done a whole topic on just that. If you're interested in learning more about that, email Courtney. She will be glad to give you some more resources on that. But where we see a lot of the conversation come up about long-term care insurance is at the time a person needs the care or very close to it, and it's often too late to get that insurance in place. And that's why we're not, for the purposes of what we're talking about today, we're not going to spend a ton of time on. The most common that we help people with is Medicaid, and that's the program that does pay for this care as for long-term care for the home health aides, nursing homes, and assisted living facilities. Okay. Now, just so you know, if we look at the paying out of pocket, right? This is where you're paying out of your cash. In-home care can cost, on average, up to $5,000 a month. Okay. Now, this can be a lot more if we have a live-in. It could be a little bit less if we have, if we have someone coming for 2 or 3 hours a day. But often this leaves people scrambling because they start to see it start to increase and they start to look at the bank account start to drop and know, well, number one, we could run out of money and deplete our savings pretty quickly. But two, even if we're not going to run out of money, we're spending a lot of money, maybe $300,000, $400,000 over the course of 4 to 5 years between the nursing home also, where we can have the state pay for this through the Medicaid program or some other option. We talked about long-term care insurance. The pros of this is it can provide coverage for an aide at home, and you have some better degree of control, of where you get care. You might be able to get a private duty nurse at home, for example, where you can't get that through the Medicaid program. But the con is that it needs to be taken out pretty early, okay, to be able to really get the benefit of the insurance plan. Traditional long-term care insurance could be a problem because it's kind of like use it or lose it, like a homeowner's plan or your auto insurance, where if you never use it, you never get the benefit of it. There's some hybrids there. Like I said, the life insurance policy can try to fix that need, but the premiums can be $15,000, $20,000 a year. And so, that's not always the best option for people. Also, just like if you ever gotten a car lease, you can play with the numbers to make the numbers work for you. So not all the policies are created equal. They may not all have the same coverage. You might be fixated on getting premium down, but that now means you have no rider attached to it to provide inflationary hedge and component into this. So you might be locked in at $300 a day as your cap with no inflation. And then, 5 years from now, that is not going to cut it. Like, for example, that if someone did that 20 years ago and has a $300 coverage with no inflation component, they are underinsured now because it's often $550, $600 a day. So they're only getting about coverage for about half of the bill. So there's a lot of confusion about long-term care insurance. And so what we're going to talk about today is the Medicaid program as that third option. Now, Medicaid is a comprehensive program that provides health insurance for people of all ages, of all income sources and types, and also asset types. But specifically what we're going to be talking about today is this Medicaid program for people 65 and older that need it for assisted living and for nursing home and for community Medicaid. And specifically, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the community Medicaid piece of it as that relates to the CDPAP program. So the biggest myth I want you to take away from this, and we hear it all the time, is that Medicaid planning and Medicaid program is not just for low income individuals. Under 65, that may be the case, but over 65, the thing is that the plan of the care that we're planning to protect against, it can be upwards of, on an average, when we figure out home care, assisted living, nursing home, $13,000 a month. So that can be between a married couple, if they both are protecting for this care, about $600,000 that we're looking to insure against. This is the home, this is our retirement savings, this is our securities. We could easily exhaust these assets. When we talk about Medicaid planning, it's not just for the low income. This is for someone who's thinking about planning to protect home health aides, nursing homes. Okay. The cost of this long-term care is exorbitant and only increasing. So the first program I want to talk about and frame for you is this community Medicaid program. And what the community Medicaid program will do is allow you to get assistance with the activities of daily living at home. Okay. At home. This is the program that keeps people out of the nursing home, because if we can meet the need adequately, safely, get the state to pay for it, ensure coverage, we can prevent a lot of the things that end up resulting in a nursing home stay. Often, if it isn't dementia or Alzheimer's, it's often a fall. Okay, it's often a fall that will make things progress to the point where a nursing home is needed. So securing and planning to secure community Medicaid early is actually one of the best hedges you can do to protect against needing a nursing home. Now, what the community Medicaid program cannot provide is nursing care. Okay, so it's not nursing care that goes beyond these activities of daily living. Really, we're getting home health aides here to help with our activities of daily living. But we can't get, respirators and medicine applied and dialysis and all these medical treatments at home. They need to be met through an outpatient facility at this point. And so if we can no longer meet that need, then that's when we need to consider a skilled nursing facility. Now, there's financial and medical requirements for this. Basically, for medical, the person needs to be disabled, but not too disabled. And it really comes into what's the safe care that they can provide at home. And financials, that's what the Medicaid planning comes in to do. And again, I want to talk a ton today about planning to get approved for Medicaid. And we have so many resources available for you on that. Again, if you're interested, reach out to Courtney on that, on like what we should be doing to get ready for planning for Medicaid. And planning ahead is absolutely crucial here because there is a pending proposed, well, not proposed really, but pending look back period. It's already been enacted by the state. That was in October 2020. They implemented a 2.5-year look back period. But because of the pandemic and the federal state of emergency, the New York State has been prohibited from actually using it. And that could change anytime. The federal state of emergency has been being extended every 90 days for like an additional 90 days. So we never know when that's going to come up and what's going to happen here. So there's definitely, we've talked about that a lot. About that, what the options are. So definitely look into some resources on that for you. The next step up is the community Medicaid program. Sorry, the assisted living program. And what the assisted living program is really for this person that falls between needing at-home care and needing nursing home care. Maybe the need is that I don't need 24/7 nursing care. I really just need some help with doctors and medication, and it can be met, but not 24/7. But it can be met on site at an assisted living program, but not. I don't need to have a nursing home care, but we're having a hard time meeting these needs at home. Okay, so it's a lower cost setting. It's a lower controlled setting in terms of a person's independence. And it's definitely there available for when a person has less medical needs. I've heard a colleague refer to this as like a cruise ship, right? That doesn't leave the dock. I mean, everything that you need is on site. They'll have the mail, they'll have the bank, they'll have the library, the nail salon, movies, entertainment, a restaurant sometimes, right? Dining. They're depending on different facilities. Some have that have apartments in them versus just rooms. You have lots of different options when it comes to assisted living facilities, but it can provide through the assisted living program. Interestingly, right? Medicaid can pay for it if the facility has ALP beds, right? That'll provide discounted personal care and room and board. So you often find that with the room and board piece of it, where you end up getting the home health aide component of it, and nursing and physical therapy and occupational therapy all covered through Medicare, Medicaid, right? The room and board you still have to pay, but because you get discounted, we often find it comparable of market rents in the area. So it's certainly a great avenue for that person that falls in between needing the home health care and the nursing home. Now, the assisted living facility that you choose must have out beds, otherwise the Medicaid won't pay for it. Some have some out beds, some have all out beds. Not all assisted living facilities participate in this program, so just be mindful of that if you are shopping that around. All right, so let's talk about the CDPAP program then, and where does that fit in? So a CDPAP program is really just a subset of the community Medicaid program. Okay, this is where we're actually looking for coverage of aides at home, right, in the community. The question then, and the difference between community Medicaid and the CDPAP program, is who is going to be the aide and who's going to be in charge of staffing and scheduling, finding those aides. Okay, with the traditional community Medicaid program, you end up applying for Medicaid, get financially approved, then it goes to the state for an assessment, then it goes to a managed long-term care insurance company for an assessment, and then you enroll with a home health agency, and the agency has a whole bunch of aides, and they staff. And if someone has to call out sick or there's a snowstorm and they can't get there, it's their responsibility to make sure that there's coverage, make sure that everything is done properly. But that doesn't always work. The main two reasons we see that not work is on the East End here, it can often be very hard to get a home health agency to staff an award of hours for a smaller award of hours. I'm just going to draw an example and say, if we have 3 hours a day, it's going to be very hard for a home health agency on the East End of Long Island here to staff that for you. And that's because the aides that they're using are coming from the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens, and it's just not economical for them to come out here for 3 hours. For 12 hours for live-in doesn't seem to be as big of an issue. But for those smaller award of hours, 3 to 8 hours, right, 3 to 6 hours, we tend to see issues. Not to say you can't do it this way. You just have to have good timing and be able to find an aide and find an agency. So this CDPAP program can fit in great where we're having difficulty finding an aide through an agency. It's not difficult to switch over from the community Medicaid program to the CDPAP program because it's covered through the community Medicaid program. So many people do go traditional community Medicaid, try to staff an aide, can't find one, and then elect to do CDPAP. And it's just dealing with the department to let them know that's what we're doing. The Department of Social Services. It's not like going back to square one because it is part of this community Medicaid program. The other piece of it is to give you more flexibility and freedom in choosing your caregivers. So we find people often have a caregiver they're private paying, potentially through the CDPAP program. You can keep that aide, and we'll talk about how. And then lastly, where a family member may already be the caregiver. Maybe you're living with mom, or if mom or dad are on the call now, you have a child that's living with you, being your sole caregiver. They can get compensated for it, as they should. I mean, again, I don't think that you should necessarily be paying them. But if the state's going to pay them, why would we not want to get them paid? They certainly should get paid for the time that they're spending. So let's talk about that. The next is the major benefit, let's say, is the ability to choose your caregiver. This can be really great where you have no ability to get an aide through a home health agency, or you're working with an aide, or you want an aide that's more local and you want to try to find somebody. So there's a couple of places that people often find. There's great resource care.com where we can find an aide on there. We've had many clients that do that. Facebook. And good old word of mouth. I mean, we find a lot of people find an aide that way. And if you already have a caregiver, you can certainly keep them. They just need to be able to work in the United States, as and they can, it gives you the ability to choose this. Now, typically, it's chosen by the person who's applying for Medicaid, or also if you're a power of attorney. If you're an agent for someone and you're listening to this call on behalf of someone else, you can do that as a healthcare agent, as a power of attorney. Now, the key thing here, biggest myth we hear is there's no prerequisites or specialized training required to be an aide under the CDPAP program. You, the home health agencies might ask you to sit for a course of their own, for a simple training. Some don't, some do, but you do not need to be a licensed home health aide here. You don't need to go to school to become a nurse. There's really no specialized training required. Now, we can also have a loved one be the aide through the CDPAP program, and this can work really great when we have someone who's a child or a brother or sister who's taking care of another. It won't work for a spouse. A spouse cannot get paid through the CDPAP program to take care of their spouse because there's a requirement, right, under the law that a spouse is legally responsible for their spouse. And so the state's not going to pay you for this. And you end up hiring this loved one as an independent contractor, and you'll need to register the loved one, the caregiver, with a Medicaid agency that handles the CDPAP program for payroll purposes. Again, they're not doing the staffing. You'll have to do that, and we'll talk about what that means in the next slide. But they do handle the payroll for payroll taxes and all that stuff. You don't have to become an accountant to do this and take care of this. The aide, whether it's the caregiver, whether it's a loved one or a caregiver you already have, needs to get a physical exam from their physician. And note that this doesn't necessarily, if it's a loved one, does not necessarily need to always interfere with the employment, because if the person, your child, is working, and we have say an award of 12 hours a day, and we were able to staff 8 of them, and we're going to use the child, the caregiver, as being able to provide 4 hours, that they don't necessarily need to quit a job to make that work. And you're not prohibited from enrolling in the CDPAP program as a caregiver if you're working, just because. I mean, it's going to be a personal thing that comes up to you and whether that can work. Again, the spouse cannot be the aide under the CDPAP program. It's just something that's not allowed. All right, so let's talk about the pros and cons of the CDPAP program, because there's always the good and the bad. And as a firm philosophy, we're here to never tell someone what to do. That's your decision. This is your life, right? We're here to help you understand the pros, the cons, the risks, the rewards, to know your options so that you make an educated decision, an informed decision about what it is that you're doing. We don't want to go here, tell you, scare you, say you got to do this, don't do this. It's a matter of choice, your choice, but it should be an informed choice. And that's what we do. So pros and cons. The pro of the CDPAP program is that you have a lot more flexibility to scheduling and who is going to provide the care with mom and dad as compared to the traditional straight community Medicaid. It also gives you more flexibility in the schedule of how you want to staff these hours. Do you want to have someone for 8 hours? Do you want to have someone for 12 hours? Do you want to have someone for 3 hours? How do you want to start to mix and match all of this? Now, to be clear, the managed long-term care plans will do an assessment, and they will tell you how many hours that they will pay for. Okay. So let's say they do an assessment, they go, oh, you have coverage for 12 hours a day. How you decide to break up that 12 hours is up to you. Okay. You could do 3 4-hour shifts. You could do 4 3-hour shifts. You could do 2 6-hour shifts. That's up to you. It gives you a lot more flexibility to do that and map out that care, especially if you have some informal caregivers currently you want to have through the CDPAP program, and maybe you have a formal caregiver that's available but is not available to increase more time. The way the assessments get done is that unscheduled needs lead themselves to awards of higher amount of hours. So what's a good example of unscheduled need would be something like, well, I need help with toileting. Well, if I need help going to the bathroom, that can help in any time during the day. And if we can demonstrate that to the MLTC and the DSS, then that leads itself to a higher award of hours because that can happen anytime during the day. If the only help I need is getting dressed and getting ready for bed and maybe bathing, well, those can be scheduled. We can schedule those. We know a person gets up at a certain time. A person goes to bed at a certain time. We can schedule bath time, right? That is all scheduled things. If it's only scheduled needs or needs that can be scheduled, then that typically lends itself to a lower amount of hours. Now, in the next slide, we'll talk about what happens if you get awarded less than you'd like. We'll talk about that. But either way, once you have that award, assuming again you're happy with it, you can have a great deal of flexibility with that schedule because you get to work it. Okay. Again, we can get family members in here, so we don't have to work with a stranger. We can work with we can help with an aide we've already been working with, and also the family members can provide more care where aides are not able to, like driving to an appointment, testing for blood sugar, administering insulin and medication, and some other skilled needs that you can take care of to meet for your loved one that a home health agency is not going to allow you to do. They, for example, will not administer insulin. The person that's on Medicaid needs to be able to do it themselves and not have to do that through the skilled nursing aid. The cons, though, okay, is that with this great control comes a great deal of responsibility. Now, the person is not the employee of the agency. So really all they're doing is payroll. So meaning that if you have any problems with your aides, that is on you. That you have no one to call for help, right? You need to now start the process of looking for a new aide. So you're responsible for those things, for hiring and firing, vetting the person, checking that you are comfortable with them. If they have to leave for 2 weeks to go on vacation, you need to take care of staffing and filling that gap. If they call out sick, that's on you to figure out. So while it can work, that is definitely something that is a problem. If you don't know about it, it is definitely work. It's not easy, let's say. It's also not difficult because, again, you have to weigh the pros and the cons. Are the cons worth the pros? In many cases, they are. And in many cases, they aren't. But ultimately, that's never something that you should let anybody other than yourselves make that decision for you, because that's a super personal decision. If you secure an agency, for example, go through the traditional Medicaid route, they take care of all of these things for you, right? They take care of the vetting. They take care of the hiring, firing, scheduling, staffing, backup care, dealing with the illnesses, okay? Now, how do the aides get paid? What is the compensation? So the hourly rates are between $13.20 to $19.09. Okay. Recently, there was a change to the labor laws that it made it so that home health aides are a non-exempt position, which means you need to pay them overtime. So if they work more than 40 hours in 1 week, they will need to be paid overtime. For that reason, depending on the agencies, not all agencies, you may have an issue with asking someone to work more than 40 hours a week, because at least scheduled regularly, because of the overtime issues. But you do have to be careful of that. And so a lot of times overtime does require the agency's prior consent. And so there's some that you can work with that will allow that. Now, you can also supplement with money for additional hours. Okay. So that would be that, like, let's say that you had an award of 8 hours and you wanted to be able to have 12 hours. So that means you need 4 more hours. Now, I told you we talk about what do you do here. Well, you could, number one, you do not need to accept the offer from the managed long-term care company. You can appeal that decision if you think that you are due more hours. I'll give you an example. We had a client that had a stroke, was virtually nonverbal, had a ton of unscheduled needs, lived completely alone, and we're trying to get him coverage at home. And he was awarded by 2 or 3 different MLTCs 4 hours a day. But we appealed it and were able to get full 24/7 care awarded. And the key thing was, one, we were able to advocate for them because the MLTC and the person and the applicant are at opposite ends of the benefits here, right? The MLTC gets paid per person they enroll. It's a flat fee. Let's call it $5,000 per person on their insurance plan. But they have to pay out whatever they need to for that person. So their goal as an insurance company is to pay out the least amount as possible. So if they could, for example, get paid on average $5,000 per person and their cost is $1,000 per person, then they make $4,000. But if their average cost per person is $7,000 and they're only getting paid $5,000 per person, then their average loss is $2,000 per person. So you can see how they're on opposite ends. Their interests do not align. So we were able to advocate for them and help them with identifying these things that are unscheduled and get them that 24/7 care. Again, not guaranteeing that everybody can get it. That case was a good one. We were able to help them out with that. But if you're not able to do that and the appeal is not successful or not worth it or whatever it might be, you just want additional hour here, there, whatever it might be, you can supplement by paying from their assets, from your assets, from a pooled income trust. You can pay for additional hours with your agency. This can also work great with the loved one and pay for additional hours to get money spent down from a pooled income trust. A lot of different options there. The other piece I just want to touch on for you here with the payment is, well, this hourly rate seems very low, right? And it is. So one of the issues and the reason why there is a big problem of finding aides out here at the East End for those smaller amount of hours is because, this number is very low. And we're talking about a very low number. And so, for example, as a contrast, we're often seeing a agency that does not accept Medicaid paying aides $30 to $45 an hour. So not to say that you need to go out and spend that much money, but if you found someone that wants $25 an hour, what do? Well, technically and legally, you cannot pay them any more than the allowable range. Okay, but lots of people do it. I can't tell you how, because as a lawyer, I can't tell you how to go about doing it. But people pay them. I think everybody can figure out how to make this work. They pay them through other benefits. They pay them cash. I can never advise a client to do it, but we know, and the state knows, and Medicaid knows that this is prevalent, that you might have an aide for $25 an hour and you're getting $19 an hour from the state, and you really like that aide, you want to keep that aide, so you pay the $6 an aide, however you figure that out. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with that. Like I said, it's very prevalent that people do this, but I just can't tell you to do it. So, all right, how do we plan ahead for this? And because often, just like community Medicaid, with this pending look back period coming on, you got to plan ahead. You got to know your options. By the time you really need to do this, often the best planning options you have are gone, right? So right now, there currently is no look back period for community Medicaid. That means there's no look back period for the assisted living program or the CDPAP program, because they're all tied in with this community Medicaid. There is a look back period through the nursing home program that's currently 5 years. But in October 2020, the state did create a law creating a 2.5-year look back period for home health care and the CDPAP and assisted living program. But because of the pandemic, they've been prohibited from implementing it. There's this ongoing extension of the federal state of emergency, which keeps this thing on pause. And that is currently extended through August 31st. And so we're watching to see what happens, because once that pandemic executive order is lifted for the state of emergency, we don't know what the state's going to do. Are they going to start rolling it out and use this 2-year look back, 2.5-year look back period? Are they going to scrap it? Are they going to go back to October and apply it? We don't know. All we can work with is what we know now. and everything else is our best guess, right? But what we know now is the state has said if you apply now, they're not going to apply this 2.5 year look back period. So if you're on the cusp of having to do this, now would be the time to talk about this, because as we approach through the summer, if that order gets lifted, then what's going to happen is that you may end up having to submit to the 2.5 year look back period, which means that we may have, let's say, not, it's never impossible to take care of this. It's just you might not have as many good options ahead of you. Not to say you don't have options. I often liken this to a chess game, right? You have options, yeah, but how the game is played out depends on what the board looks like, and maybe we have to take a step back to take a step forward. So it's something to think about if you're on the cusp. What do they do then if they roll this out, and then what do they do with everybody that applied during the interim between the October 2020 and, let's say, this summer, if they lift this pandemic and start to implement this? Well, we don't know. Best guess, I think it's going to be very hard for an overstaffed, under budgeted, underfunded Department of Social Services to go back and implement this for all of these people that applied during a 2-year plan. And it seems more likely that they would just apply it moving forward. But I don't know. Either way, again, if you're on the cusp of wanting to do this, now would be the time, because at least you've done it. And then if they go back and do it retro back to October 1st of 2020, then so be it. You're in the same boat you would be at now. But if they make it effective going forward, you will have taken the opportunity prior to this to be able to make sure that you've taken your steps. Okay, so how does estate planning tie into all of this? Again, email Courtney if you're interested in webinars we have on some of the Medicaid planning strategies. But really what it comes down to, if I could sum it up for you right now, is that estate planning allows you to get money out of your name for Medicaid purposes while protecting it for you. That's really what it comes down to. If we can get it out before the look back periods, we can preserve Medicaid eligibility. We can protect against estate recovery, all the clawbacks that Medicaid might have, and be able to do that in a way that protects you, the individual, and doesn't have any negative tax consequences, maintain some degree of control for you to be able to undo this whole thing and put it back if you want it, or spend your money if you need to. There's a lot of different options. One of the most common proactive tools that we use is a Medicaid asset protection trust. And it really does do all of these things, right? It properly used with a strategy can help qualify you for Medicaid when needed and get the clock running on the assets for nursing home care, for home care, if that ends up being an issue. It'll also protect your rights to live in your real property. Often the biggest tool that we work with clients for, the biggest asset, especially early on for proactive planning, is their house. So we want to preserve our rights to live in the house and property tax benefits, but it's not a good fit for everybody. And so we never take a one-size-fits-all approach to any of the planning we do. It's all specifically tailored to your needs. The trust is just one tool. We reach into our toolbox. That might be one piece of this whole thing. Maybe it's also a different type of trust. Maybe it's a revocable trust. The point is that in order to really figure that what works directly for you and how to get ahead of this is to do a review of your family. And so, a case review will help us identify what your goals are, identify what your worries are, what your objectives are, and exactly what your situation is now, to help you figure out exactly what to do before doing it. Think of it like you would never build a house without first having blueprints, and you wouldn't have blueprints without having first met with someone to verbalize what your design, your wishes, your legacy is, and have that someone translate that into what they do, which is build houses. It's the same thing for estate plans. So, this is for you if you want to protect your assets, if you've worked hard for your assets and don't want this to be eaten up by Medicaid. This is also for you, again, even if you are closer to needing home care and you want to enroll in the CDPAP program, you want to get community Medicaid, stay at home, stay safe, stay at a nursing home, and figure out a plan to take care of your loved ones. So how this will work is it's a 20-minute meeting, a virtual, where we'll go through your situation, we'll walk through your goals, provide some additional resources that we referenced in the call today as you'd like, and discuss how we can help you with your individual situation. So to set up your case review, just go ahead and call the number here, 631-506-8440. I'll put that back up right here for you, just so you can get that down. And then I will open the floor to the Q&A, Courtney, and I'll go past this slide here. So it does have some other ways that you can contact our firm. That would be really the best way for you to take care of that.
Yeah, so feel free to put any questions that you have regarding, community Medicaid, the different aspects that we talked about, whether it's the CDPAP program, the general Medicaid, the ALP program, or any asset protection estate planning questions that you have. There's a Q&A button down below. Just be careful about any, important personal information being put in the questions, just for your own protection. So go ahead and put them in there as your questions come to you. For the first question, someone is wondering regarding nursing home Medicaid, the look back period for that, just a little more about what the current time span is and what that entails.
So the look back period for nursing home care is 5 years. And what the look back really means is that when you apply for Medicaid, the Department of Social Services, the government agency which considers the application, is going to look back at all of your assets that you had either opened or closed during that 5-year window. And what they're looking for are gifts, transfers out of your name for the purposes of qualifying for Medicaid. So for example, if you gift your house to a Medicaid asset protection trust and then 2 years later need a nursing home, when you apply, Medicaid's going to say, I need to see everything that happened over the last 5 years. They're going to see the transfer of the house out of your name to qualify for Medicaid. They're going to penalize you for that transfer. Okay, they're going to say, oh, you gave away money, so you have to pay for your care. Okay. We then usually will turn that into flip that whole thing around and say, what that all means then is a 5-year clock, right? And so you've all heard the 5-year clock. And is that any different than the look back? Really, no, it's just we're changing the way we're experiencing it, because we're not applying for Medicaid today. We're not talking about the Medicaid looking back, because we're not applying for Medicaid today for many people, especially when we're talking about a Medicaid asset protection trust. We're talking about planning now to protect in the future, which means we can look forward, right? And say that if I put the house in the trust today, 5 years goes by, a clock of 5 years, then on that next day, the 5 years in one day, I applied for Medicaid, then the 5-year look back would now no longer include that gift of the house. So that's how it works. Now, Medicaid has gone ahead and applied this same exact concept to community Medicaid, okay, with a 2.5-year look back period. So it's the same thing. It's going to change the whole way that we do planning again for community Medicaid. So that's that impending change that I was talking about earlier that's not quite in effect yet.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is regarding protecting the home. People have heard that, their home could be at risk. Is that something that's true, that, Medicaid can put a lien against the home?
Absolutely. So 100%, the house is at risk. And I often get the other question is like, well, can't my spouse continue to live in it? I read that online. And the answer is yes. There's a lot of things that need to happen to protect against a couple different things that are at play here. The two biggest places where the house is at risk is going to be eligibility for Medicaid, and 2, estate recovery. And the easiest way to explain those two would be like if you go out to the bar and you want to get some drinks, the bartender might ask you for a credit card if you want to open a tab. And you're not really paying for those drinks yet. You've just shown the bartender the ability to pay. They start serving drinks. You have some wine. You maybe have some appetizers. Now you're ready to go, and you have to close out. Closing out is like a state recovery, okay, where now the tab has to be paid. So the house can be at risk at both of those. the house can, number one, be at risk at eligibility level for two major spots. One, where the equity of the house is more than the allowable cap. This year, it's about $880,000. So if the equity is above that, which we've seen record increases in real estate here across the country, but mainly also here on the East End. If the equity is now over 880,000 roughly, then that equity that's over is at risk immediately. You're not eligible for Medicaid. But if we're below, okay, then what happens is we're eligible, but if we're in a nursing home, Medicaid could put a lien against the property for the care that they're providing. Now, they won't foreclose on the property or collect on that lien as long as all the papers are signed the proper way with the county, but they do get this running lien that's just piling up for all the care that you're providing, kind of like the tab, where they'll get paid back at the end. Now, there's a couple places where they can't put the lien. That is, for example, if there's a spouse living in the property, is one great example where they can't put the lien on, which gives us some great options for this we call second stage planning when we have a spouse that's at home. So you do have options there. But if the second spouse, the healthy spouse, never does any planning, there's this one out there called the estate recovery, where again, Medicaid could place a lien, even if they hadn't done it during lifetime, to collect against the property. So there are a lot of tricky things here. There's definitely scenarios where the house could escape free and clear, but there are more doors where the state can end up taking the home than there are where the state doesn't take the home. So when I have this conversation with clients, I'll always say to them, again, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but how are you looking at this? Are you looking at this? I'm hoping for the best, and door number one, which doesn't take the home, is the one that plays out. Okay. And if that's the way you want to go with it, then that's fine. If you are planning for the worst, though, then you should plan for doors number 2, 3, 4, and 5, which end up with the house being taken. So that's really, there's some definite big pitfalls there with the house, but with proper planning, they can all be avoided.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jay. Any outstanding questions can be put in now, but we do have plenty of resources if you're interested in other topics. And also if you're interested in any future webinar topics, feel free to put them in there or email me. We're happy to take any recommendations for topics that you think are going to be helpful for anyone. So you can give me
for those case reviews, are we doing those for the attendees of the webinar today? We're doing those complimentary?
Yes, those are completely complimentary.
Complimentary. So if you have from this webinar, you have some questions on how this specifically can fit into what your needs are, make sure you make that call, get on, and we can certainly help point you in the right direction, because you have a lot of options here, and a failure to plan here is truly a plan to fail.
Yes, and my email's in the chat. I'll put it in there again. Our phone number is below, so you can give us a call. We're here 9 to 5 today, so you can give me a call. I'll be happy to send over whatever resources I have about the topics and practice areas that we help with.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day.